Hello, this is the RPG Crawler, and welcome to another Indie Game Friday, where each week I take a look at a different independent role-playing game. This week I figured I'd take a look at a JRPG in the RPG Maker style, since it's been a while since I've showcased a decent one. Also, because the developer was kind enough to provide a review key, so I figured I'd go ahead and take a look. Developed and published by Potato Brain Games, Eredia, The Diary of Heroes was released on Steam on April 13th, 2018, and is available on both Steam and itch.io. Now, those of you who have watched my channel for a while probably know that JRPG-style games aren't usually my favorites, although there are the occasional exceptions. So I'm usually pretty reluctant to take a look at most RPG Maker games. However, Eredia has a certain degree of polish that a number of them don't really meet, and at a relatively reasonable price tag. So I figured, hey, let's go ahead and take an actual look at it. Let's start with the plot. The game begins by following a pair of heroes heading towards an enemy encampment, only to find out that it's been entirely wiped out. Once there, they meet a mysterious knight and engage him in battle. After the fight's conclusion, the plot cuts to the main character, one Kenrad Krauser, a young and brash hunter who fancies himself a hero. In the game's universe, hunters take contracts to do basic good deeds for money, anything from investigating disappearances and lost pets, to finding bandits, to fighting monsters. The plot then follows him along from there. The game starts relatively slowly, with a pretty standard, albeit polished, old-school JRPG exploration method. You meander around tile-based maps, talking to people, answering queries, and ransacking every shelf and barrel for objects of interest. There are sparkling interactive nodes that show where certain crafting resources can be gathered, scattered throughout all of the maps. Play proceeds by heading to different maps. The very first part of the game and the first initial quests all take place across a few adjacent connected maps, but after you leave the starting area, you are placed onto a classic overworld map, where you can seek additional nodes and places out. Most maps with active enemies have the generic random encounter method shared by so many classic RPGs of yore, although there are the occasional maps with enemies visible on them. These are usually quest-related, such as clearing out a cave or a bandit den. Eredia does offer a fast transit system in the form of a large teleportation crystal situated at major settlements, which goes a long way towards cutting down on the tedium of travel back and forth, which you'll find yourself doing quite often. Combat itself is pretty straightforward, from a JRPG perspective at least. Characters select attacks, spells, skills, or items from menus, and actions beyond basic attacks take either TP, MP, or both. MP is pretty standard in how it's handled, but TP is generated depending on what kind of stance your character is in. Certain classes can adopt different stances, which gives them TP based on their actions or other combat events. In fact, many classes have a variety of skills that they can pick up, which you can then equip before battle just as you would equipment. While individual NPC companions are of set classes, you do switch out companions pretty regularly, depending on your choices throughout the game. So you can use this to sort of govern your party of up to 4 characters. After each combat, characters gain experience and treasure, and level ups are handled automatically, with each character gaining in different attributes based on their class. To be honest, while the combat is a little bit more challenging than just your typical hit a key to cycle through the attacks that some old-school JRPGs are guilty of, it only really requires a lot of thought on bosses, in which case you do well to select attacks based on their effects and that particular boss's weaknesses. There is an overall difficulty level adjustment for the game, however, that can provide more challenge if that's your thing. Now, there are several subsystems in the game. There's a house to upgrade, there's factions to join, there's pets to recruit, there's even supposedly crafting, but my initial look at the game really only just started to get a glimpse of some of those subsystems before I had to call it. As is typical of Indie Game Friday, I was actually only able to devote a handful of hours to my initial look. In this case, I actually played for about twice as long as I usually do. However, I was unable to actually reach many of the advertised subsystems in that time frame. I need to note, however, that while I can't offer commentary on those subsystems as a result, I can say that the reason I didn't get to them is because of how rich and involved the stories and quests are in this game. There are segments of the game that offer simple hack and slash, but a lot of the quests I encountered required a lot of conversations, and the major quest itself ended up involving an actual investigation in the form of running around between different places, looking for actual clues, and making decisions. In fact, a lot of the choices that cropped up during this game, in just the several hours that I spent with it, more than I would have expected from the genre, were really, really interesting, and many of the choices felt very meaningful. This is one of those games that really focuses on the depth of storyline and characterization, and while it's not entirely free of the same tropes that put me off of some JRPGs, it is less linear than those I am used to. Side quests are also handled in a manner vaguely reminiscent of, say, the Witcher series, where some are given by NPCs you speak with, but you also have a central contact or message board in each town. You can take contracts or complete them whenever you have time. I found that this was a nice little touch, and I definitely think that the game benefits from it. I do have some minor issues with the game, but a lot of them really derive from the genre as usual. Many of the classic tropes of JRPGs are present. Long exposition dumps, cutscenes of events that the character has no way of knowing about, and even the main playable character starting as an obnoxious brat that I just want to just slap the snot out of and just leave him behind. These are all elements I really kind of dislike in any RPG in general, but they're part and parcel of the genre, and setting them aside, the rest of the storyline did catch my interest. There's also the fact that it is an indie RPG Maker game, albeit a very polished one. As such, a lot of the assets, from sprites to music to even the scripts used within the game, may seem a bit familiar to those who have played many indie games, or especially indie RPG Maker games in general. That having been said, they are chosen well, and the world itself is well composed, meaning that while it shares the basic look and feel of other games in the genre, it does differentiate itself just enough, and it feels like a cohesive project. With the amount of competence this game shows in overall design and world building, and the depth of various stories and characters encountered, I think it's honestly enough to justify the asking price. But that's going to depend a lot on whether or not you like the RPG Maker derived games. It definitely feels like it's in the top tier of such games, in technical execution and in writing. However, if you don't like those old school RPG Maker style games, it's probably not going to win you over. If you could care less one way or the other, you'll probably get your money's worth out of it though, because there really does seem to be a lot of content available, and at least a modicum of replayability in the form of various story-affecting decision points. And on that note, I'll leave it at that. This has been the RPG Crawler with Indie Game Friday, Eredia, Diary of Heroes. Link will be in the description below, as always. If you like what you've seen, remember to leave a like, comment if you got any feedback, and subscribe for more RPG content, both tabletop and computer. Until next time, take care and goodbye.